onto campus and the ring road at all and eliminate some of that traffic. So that's certainly a possibility to look at. One of the other possibilities was building a road to access from 91. The problem with that is our problem is with Dunlap Middle and Dunlap High. They cause the congestion. The Dunlap Middle feeder schools all come from the Cedar Hills direction. There's no good way really to get from the Cedar Hills direction around to the 91. So I'm not sure that would be as beneficial as potentially opening up that lot behind the teachers and having maybe that as a student lot. There's some work that'll have to be done with that, but just if we can eliminate just the seniors like we've done, I noticed a huge difference in getting in and out. Congratulations to Mr. Mize and his wife, new addition to the family, baby number 2. So congratulations to you and hope all is well. And then lastly, she's not here. I wanted to thank Katie Caslett for the 4 prank calls that I received on Saturday from her children, who her 6-year-old snagged her phone and called my number. Now, when I get a call on a Saturday afternoon from Katie Caslett, I answer it, because Katie doesn't ever call me unless something's serious, especially on a weekend or an evening. So I answered it. It's her 6-year-old wanting to know if I had ordered a pizza. And they're laughing so hard they can't even get the words out. So I just go, okay, and they hang up. Call right back, do it again, hang up. Well, then I've got my family in the car. Then we start playing into it. So I start getting it like, hey, I'm hungry. Where's my pizza? And the kids, it made my whole day. Of course, Katie was mortified because her kids got hold of her phone on accident. But it was a good way to lighten the mood on a Saturday. So I was hoping to give Katie a hard time, but she'll hear about it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dearman. And again, we do appreciate our administrators and teachers that work so hard for graduations, and of course, the teacher appreciation. We appreciate everybody in our district who does such a great job to make it such a great district, so thank you. At this time, we'll move on to public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, this concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to the information discussion items.
Abby, can I mention that I'm not sure if Dr. Dearman pointed out, but I think this is this Mr. Lawson's last meeting? Did you mention that, Dr. Dearman?
I did not.
Well, I'd like to acknowledge Scott Lawson, who this is his last meeting as vice principal or assistant principal from Dunlap Valley. I was part of the committee that brought him on, and I gave him a B+ in his interview, but he's done a great job with my 2 boys, and I just want to thank him for being a part of the Dunlap family for the last couple of years. So thanks, Scott.
Everybody else is still here.
The school activity account reports are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Next, there will be a discussion regarding the elementary technology program. Mrs. Housingay, did you have any questions or anything you'd like to address?
Yeah, so I asked to have this as a discussion item for this month, and I believe it was about a year ago when the technology program was eliminated from the elementary schools, and I talked to Mr. Andrews and asked if he could just give an update on what the kids are getting today versus what they would have got back when we had a formal technology program.
We're currently working with our teachers. We have been obviously we've been very busy with curriculum and focusing on literacy and our ELA resources, but technology and how we would be addressing that at the elementary level is something that we've been continuing to have conversations about. Recently, Illinois did, just this past January, release new technology standards, which increased what Illinois schools are needing to obviously address within their technology curriculum. So everything from hardware to application use to computational thinking through coding, those sorts of things. While we do have some of the standards that are being addressed and can be addressed within the classrooms without. Right now, we have how we have our keyboarding skills being obviously introduced and addressed is differing from classroom to classroom. There are good applications, web-based applications that can be used, but of course it's not the same as having a live in-person instructor who has gone through the training to introduce and refine those skills. As well as, we all have our own varying degree of awareness of technology with both hardware and software. So having the ability to introduce those to especially kindergarten students, and then the increasing use of it through different applications throughout high school or throughout elementary school, so that by the time we get to middle school and high school, they're able to use various resources for different needs. We have that being done. Again, it's just not a uniform matter because everyone has their own different level of understanding. One of the main charges of technology teachers previously was to introduce those and to work with classroom teachers so that in terms of MLA formatting and being able to write a research paper, that they were helping with that. And then the last couple of large rock items would include, again, coding, both in unplugged, which would be without computer-based, so introducing even at the kindergarten level, the concepts of coding, so they understand that. So when they're older, they actually have the foundational understanding of when I'm asking the computer to do these different things from the coding standpoint, they understand why they have to do things in a certain sequential manner. And then robotics as well. We had the use of robotics, which obviously coincides some with coding, that was done previously as well.
Any questions for Mr. Andrews?
Matt, what are the, what are schools like Morton and Washington, those districts doing? Do they offer technology specifically at the elementary level?
Yes, I did reach out to verify that they do have elementary technology.
They have actual teachers?
Correct.
So you mentioned that part of the charge of technology teachers was to make it more uniform across the district. So right now, a third grader at Hickory Grove could be getting different technology instruction than a third grader at Banner.
Correct. And so that's one of the many different initiatives that we're working on, is to help bring that uniformity to it. It's just harder because you have those who, again, have more familiarity, and there are concepts that can easily be picked up, but it's just not necessarily part of their training. So working to bridge that.
And previously it was 2 full-time positions that jumped schools.
It was 3. We had one teacher split between Banner and Ridgeview, one between Dunlap Grade and Wilder Wade, and one who was exclusively at Hickory Grove.
So I guess based on that, I would propose at the next meeting potentially trying to get this reinstated for the next school year. I don't know if there's any additional discussion or questions that you guys have.
Any other questions, discussion?
Based on this, is there any underlying reason not to reinstate it? I believe back when it was eliminated, we were looking at a $5 million deficit. Looking at the numbers now, I believe this year we're actually coming in $2 million under our expense budget for the year based on the latest projections that I got from Mike McKenzie. And looking total, when we did our budget at the beginning of the year, we were looking at about a $2 million deficit. Based on the estimate now, we're going to have a deficit less than $1 million. So, I think if this was eliminated back in the day because we were being financially conscious of the deficit that we were looking at, we're not in that situation anymore. And based on the new standards and the benefit that hundreds of kids in the district get from this program, does anybody see a reason not to reinstate it?
I think we just discussed the deficit in the ed fund is gonna be 600,000 this year. Are you looking at the overall budget or just the deficit of the ed fund?
So I've got both here. So of the operating fund, we approved a budget with a deficit of $2 million. And based on the latest projection, we should be about $1 million better than that.
So we're gonna be deficit of $1 million instead of $2 million.
Instead of $2 million, and then overall, and some of that is because our revenues are lower than what they had expected, but if you look at the operating budget, we're coming in $2 million less than what we had approved at the beginning of the year.
Is Mr. McKenzie in here?
Yeah,
Yes.
Can you share what you talked about regarding the budget earlier, the deficit that you project in the ed fund? The deficit in the ed fund from this year, could you just review what you shared earlier?
I mean, we're looking right now about $600,000. We only have 3 payrolls left. I mean, it's gonna fluctuate depending on how the revenue looks and everything. But yeah, our deficit in the ed fund is less than we were expecting. Transportation's a little more than I was expecting because we bought more buses and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a better projection. Now, next year, we're gonna have increased utility costs and increased labor costs and everything too. But yeah, I mean, it's very positive, been very positive this year, so.
I'm looking at here, which I think you just sent us late in
Yeah,
the day,
today, yes.
and I'm showing 620,000 deficit in the ed fund.
In the end, yes.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me, but 600 or something, yes.
And does this has to come out of the ed fund, right?
These salaries come out of the ed fund.
Most expenses come out of the ed fund, so yeah. And then, we could, the operating funds are kind of the things you really control a little bit more than some of the other funds, so. We have more discretion in, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. I hope I didn't put you on the spot. Any further discussion?
Well, I guess I'm looking for some feedback there. I mean, based on a year ago when this action was taken, we were looking at a $5 million deficit. So, I mean, now that we're in a better situation and the benefits and the requirements that's being put on the district specifically for technology, I mean, is there anybody that sees any reason not to reinstate it?
I'll speak up. I won't be changing my vote if it comes up next month. We're in the deficit and we're in negotiations now. We know costs are going to be going up next year, so I suspect that deficit will be greater. I won't be changing my vote. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
Mr. Wagner, do you have anything to say?
I asked some questions on what they do and how they teach, what all they teach, and I got some answers. I need to learn more. I'm always there to not spend it if I think they're getting adequate, but you can't do everything. And I'm probably with Mike.
Ms. Henry, do you have anything to say?
Because what I'm hearing is we're still in a deficit. So I'm concerned.
Tom, anything further?
Well, you all can go back and look at YouTube. It's on the video. I spoke on this for 8 minutes at last May's meeting. I feel very strongly about having this back on. I think, Dr. Dearman at the top talked about how we're on the U.S. News and World Report, greatest of things, but I mean, I think it's a bit embarrassing that we don't have technology as a specific course. I don't know a thing about coding, but I think our children should. And we often compare. It's why I asked Matt. I mean, anytime I think it's convenient, we say, well, what is Morton and Washington doing? So this time, maybe it's a little less convenient that they have it, but I think we need to find the money, and I think it's technology. And if we don't have technology in this day and age as a priority, then we should not be on that US News and World Report ranking. That's where I'm at.
Okay, I know Mrs. Holzhauser's not here. I'd be interested to know what she has to say as well. I think that technology is very important. I do. I think they are still learning technology, probably not with a specific technology teacher. I think having a specific technology person could be a benefit. However, my concern revolves mostly with the deficit, the fact that we're adding more money next year, hopefully, to try to improve security. If we could maybe move some things around, look at some of our programs that might be a little bit more of an expenditure and peel back there and maybe add the technology program back, that could be a possibility. I also know we're looking at least another 5% in salaries, or maybe 4%, depending on negotiations. So I think it's worth looking at the programs to see if there's some way we can move things around and possibly bring some technology back. But the kids are getting technology just by classroom teachers. They're also getting it at the middle school by specific technology people, and at the high school. I'm not sure what coding goes on K through 3rd grade. Perhaps there is some type of coding that goes on at that grade level, and I think it's worth exploring, but at this point, I'm not ready to take a vote and say that I would want to install it without looking at some other ways we can shuffle our resources.
So can we make that a follow-up for the next time is, because, I mean, I look at the number of elementary students that would benefit from a program like this, and when it was cut, I wasn't here, but I don't recall that there was a list of things to look at and evaluate, okay, this, kind of rack and stack, where do we actually want to make these cuts because we're looking at this huge deficit, which we no longer have anymore. So I feel like if you're gonna cut a program, or, I like your idea of what are some of the other things that we can look at that maybe isn't affecting, I don't even know how many elementary students we've got, 5,000?
No, we don't even have that many of them.
We're looking about half our population, so about between 1,800 and 2,000.
So 2,000 elementary students. There's other programs that might cost as much that.
Or things that could maybe be done a little less expensively. And there are programs we did talk about. I mean, we have talked about for years. I know we looked at the middle school program, the middle school concept. I know Mrs. Disher was very passionate about the cost of that program compared to other programs. We did look at the list of things that we could cut when we were going through the budget deficit, and it wasn't fun. It's never fun to look at, see, which program is more important than the other. But I think it's something that we could probably discuss or ask our administration to take a look at some of the programs we offer and see where maybe we could pare back and then bring some technology back in. That might be something we could ask our administration to do and come back with some proposed ideas. When we did this before, of course, everybody thought we were cutting everything that was on the list. So I think it has to be done tactfully without people overreacting. But that is our job, to be fiscally responsible. And if that's something our administration could give us some possible scenarios or options, I think we'd all be willing to take a look at it, as long as we're not continuing to be in a deficit when it comes to spending, because we all know the largest fund is our education fund. We have to pay people to be here for our children, and they deserve to be paid and paid fairly. But there's only so much of that pie to go around, and if you can come back with some scenarios or options, I think everyone on the board would be willing to listen.
I'm a little hesitant to prepare options because I've done that before, and that kind of stirs up a hornet's nest of people concerned about whatever is on the list, even if it's just for discussion. It raises people's dander and sometimes unnecessarily. Really, I've heard it from everyone at the table. We're deficit spending. There is a cost associated with bringing technology back, and no one is arguing that it's not good for kids to have these things. But really, is it a yes or a no? Are we gonna bring it back knowing it's gonna add to the deficit? That's really what it comes down to.
Can we get a poll from the administrators and see what their check off the checklist, what are you teaching, so that we kind of know? Sounds like it's kind of all over the board, or is that something we want to know?
Well, that could be monitored. I mean, that's with reading or math or anything else. I mean,
That's true.
if you have a curriculum person that tells you, you don't want to say, you're on this page at this time of year, but in any district, you have a curriculum and it's to be followed as closely as it can be followed.
There is a set curriculum.
Yeah, so we, because of COVID and trying to be mindful of, with restrictions and socially distance, within those bounds, we gave resources that address the standards that we were teaching previously. So they have resources that are available to them that address a good number of the same standards. Coding and robotics, that's something that currently isn't unless the classroom teacher has those materials themselves. But think concepts like keyboarding and use of applications and hardware, those are things that are part of the curriculum because we do have one-to-one technology across the district. So it's natural that it would be an implicit instruction because they're using the device for their math or for their reading or for their social studies. So they're getting it that way instead of the explicit.
So we purchase resources for them to be able to do that. I have two questions. Are there resources to teach coding and whatever else you just said? And number two, are the teachers getting their prep periods because they're having to teach computers?
So that does add to the preparation of the elementary teachers if you're going to ask them to go above and beyond what some basic applications would do, which is what was the empowered charge of our technology teachers when we had them to create all those lessons to deliver. So it would be adding to that. But that's part of one of the goals of our curriculum council next year is to look at the new technology standards and then how can we approach those within our classrooms. But obviously, further guidance from here would do what we need to.
All right, does anyone else have any other points they'd like to bring up or discussions? Okay, well, so how do you want to proceed? Do you want to have a vote on this at the next meeting? Or do you want to take some time and maybe have them explore some other options if he has a committee that's going to look at technology?
I guess what would it take? I mean, what does our deficit or surplus need to be in order to reconsider reinstating it? Because the way it feels is it's cut, it's not coming back. Because at the time we were at a $5 million deficit, it was cut. That was never the case. That never happened. You know, we're performing better now, and I understand why it was cut at the time, but the situation that we were in was never real. So I guess I just, in my head, the way that it seems is that even if we do come back and we're even at a surplus, I don't feel like there's any appetite to get it reinstated. So.
I think if we were in a surplus, you would have people that might be interested. I'm not sure where the surplus is going to come from when we're already projected that we're going to be more than $500,000 short in the ed fund this year. We're going to have at least 4 to 5% increase on costs in the ed fund with the contract negotiations. So I think, you know, it's hard for me to say what every board member has on their mind. And I think, you know, if it's on the agenda for a vote, we'll know how everybody feels. If it's not, if you want to wait and take some time to have them explore other options, we can do that too. But, you know, of course, we can't take a vote tonight because it's just information.
You can always put it on as a voting or an action item, but then take it off, can't you, prior to voting?
We can. I also know there's been some concern about Robert's rules addressed, but if you have the support of the rest of the board to put it on for a motion, I do not have concerns with doing that.
So I'd say just put it on and then take it off.
Okay, thank you. information regarding renewals of the 2022 transportation contracts for the North Mister Learning Center and Fun and Fit Preschool is included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
I didn't look up last year's, was that increased by,
Small.
Yeah, I had Mr. McKenzie run a cost analysis on that to make sure the increases were covering our expenses, and they are.
Information regarding the consolidated district plan is included in the board packet. Are there any questions? I have a question. I know this is the new name for what used to be called the Title I grant, is that correct?
So the consolidated district plan is that plus it's IDPA plus
Yes,
it's.
the other grant, okay. It's just very confusing and sometimes concerning to the public, because when they start talking about a consolidated district plan, I think sometimes they get, I had a few people ask me about this, and I told them we do this every year, we used to call it the title grants, so just want to make that clear to the general public, so. Do we have any questions on that? Information regarding the DVMS Title I school-wide plan is included in the board packet. Are there any questions? This concludes the information discussion items segment of the meeting. The board will now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion regarding items on the consent agenda? May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Feldman.
Aye.
Henry. Aye. Housengate.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Wagonbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Motion carried. The board will now move on to the action items. The bill list, treasurer's report, and district investment report are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? May I please have a motion to approve the payment of bills?
I'll move to approve the payment of bills in the amount of $5,092,396.49 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaugh. Any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Henry. Aye. Holzhauser. Housengate.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Wagonbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
Motion carried. Information regarding resolutions to intervene in the property tax appeal is included in the board packet. May I please have a motion to approve the resolutions?
I move to approve resolutions number 17 and 18 as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaugh. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Housengate.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Wagonbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
I need to abstain due to a professional conflict.
Henry. Aye.
Motion carried. Information regarding the bid for Dunlap High School auditorium sound system is included in the board packet, and I would like to move to approve the bid in the amount of $166,110 for the Dunlap High School auditorium system as presented. May I have a second?
Second.
I pushed this one far enough, I get to second.
How about you make?
I had to sit through it the last 2 nights, so, but I'll give it to you, Mike.
Okay.
I noticed there was a speaker deduction on that bid. Is that not happening? Or do you know what I mean? There was no dollar amount with it, but that bid had an option for this deduction.
Is that the removal of the other speakers?
It was about 10,000 for removal of the old speakers and cabling.
I thought it was positioning of the new ones, but anyway, I'm sure you got it right.
As far as I understand, this is also for the system for presentations in the auditorium with the speakers for the
Wireless.
I'm sorry?
The wireless one.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that they all can have newer, improved ones, that the sound system is better during presentations, is that correct?
Yeah, there's new wireless mics included, and there's a quote of lack of a better term, a dummy feature, where you basically just hit a button and you want to use it to talk. So you don't have to mess with all the gadgets. It's got kind of a quick.
And this was on the summer project list last month. Can we still get that done this summer?
Please.
I'm sorry.
Can we still get that done this summer the new system. So we're
Dr.
ready
Green,
to-
did they, Thompson's give you a time frame?
Probably not this one.
Now, originally, when we had all the vendors for the pre-bid meeting, they asked timeline. Of course, we said summer, but they're dealing with supply chain issues, especially with high-end electronics. They would say, I believe, Christmas to early spring is a more realistic timeline.
It's been 2 years in the making here.
And the 42,000 is just, we asked because we were afraid that this was gonna be another bid, so we said, also give us what it would be without the wireless. Like, we knew we wanted that, but just to give us some options, so that's why it says minus 42, so if we took that off, it would be 113. So it wouldn't be what we wanted, but it is,
That's what I saw.
yeah.
And this does meet with the approval of Jason Shea, who's very knowledgeable with this, which was important because he knows much more about that stuff than I do. So it's met with approval from the music department.
And Dr. Adrian as well.
Yeah, he was in on the bid process.
That takes that off.
Information regarding the destruction of close.
We need to take a vote.
I'm sorry. Let's vote on that speaker system.
So I've got Humbles, motion, and then Wisdom second. So Humbles,
Aye.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Housengate.
Motion carried. Information regarding the destruction of closed session audio is included in the board packet. May I please have a motion to approve the destruction of closed session audio?
I move to approve the destruction of the closed session audio as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaum. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Housengate, Humbles.
Aye. Motion carried. Information regarding the intergovernmental agreement for the police services is included in the board packet. May I please have a motion to approve the agreement? I move to approve the agreement for the for 2022-25 intergovernmental agreement for the police services as presented. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaum. Any discussion?
Yeah. We had a discussion about this at the last board meeting in open session, and there were some concerns that were raised about a potential other alternative for security, and just for the sake of the people here and the people public, I think we should point out that we're going back to the system that we currently have, with 2 sheriff's deputies here full-time.
Correct,
Correct?
correct. Peoria County Sheriffs.
Right.
Roll call vote.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Housengate, Humbles,
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Motion carried. Information regarding the recommended updates to board policy 4:430 is included in the board packet. May I please have a motion to approve the update? I move to approve the updates to board policy 4:30 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaum. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Feldman,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Housengate, Humbles,
Aye.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carried. Information regarding the 2022-2023 school lunch fees is included in the board packet. May I please have a motion to approve those lunch fees?
I move to approve the 22-23 school lunch fees as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaum. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Henry,
Aye.
Housengate, Humbles,
Aye.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Motion carries. Information regarding the contract for the Dunlap High School assistant principal is included in the board packet. May I please have a motion to approve the contract?
I'll move to approve the administrator contract as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaum. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Housengate, Humbles,
Aye.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Motion carried. This concludes the action item portion of the meeting. May I please have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
move to adjourn to closed session for the following purpose as stated in the Open Meetings Act, the employment compensation, and performance of specific employees, student discipline cases, collective negotiating matters, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, security procedures, the purchase of real property, and litigation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Feldman.
Aye.
Henry. Aye. Hausengate. Humbles.
Aye.
Wagonbach. Wisdom.
Motion carried. The time is 6:43 PM. Thank you, everybody, for a great school year. Have a great summer.
Hey, before you leave, Amy Jones stepped in, and this is her last meeting as well. So, Ms. Jones, good luck to you, and thank you. David found his low point job that he's going to. I think their board meeting's nice. I think he went to that. Several hours.
Take her. Did you spit in it?
Don't forget the food trucks. Oh, no.